Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the December meeting of the Planning West Committee. We're not expecting a fire drill today, so if the alarm sounds, please leave the building by the signposted exit doors and meet in the car park. Will be safely escorted to a slightly safer point. Follow officers through the doors. The meeting is being recorded and will be streamed on YouTube. Please note, we do not have microphones or speakers in the room today, so can everyone speaking please speak clearly. Those remotely will be able to be heard through the OWL meeting system. Any members of the public present should be aware that they may be recorded even if they are not participating in the meeting at that time. If this causes you any concern, let me know now. Okay. Okay, in that case, we'll move on to item 1 on our agenda, which is apologies for John.
Thank you, Chair, and apologies from Councillor Dave Mansell and Councillor Andy Sully, who is present online.
Thank you. Have you got any others? Okay. Item 2 is the minutes from the previous meeting, which is pages 13 to 16 in your pack. Is it your wish to assign those to the true record of that? Yes. Okay. Item 3, declarations of interest. Declarations of interest on items on this meeting today on the agenda. Okay. Item 4, questions, public question time. Josh, go home.
Thank you, Chair. There's no public questions, but there are application questions on that occasion.
Of course, in the normal manner. Okay, well, just before we move to item 5, I'm going to introduce Dawn de Vries and ask you to explain the conditions around item 5.
Thank you. So to members that I haven't met as yet, hello, I'm the service manager for development management. So you've probably seen my counterpart, which starts from doing Cooper. So I'm here today because we've got other officers at another committee meeting in one of the other geographic areas. In terms of item 5, the application has been appealed. So it's with the planning inspector because they've appealed on non-determination, which means we didn't make a decision in time and they've gone to the planning inspector now to make a decision. The reason it's before members is that we have to present the case to the planning inspector in terms of what we would have done with it if we'd been left to determine it. So the recommendation is on page 57, but it's basically for the committee, so the committee can confirm what they would have done with it had we have been deciding it. The recommendation from committee will not make a decision on the application, but it will inform how we defend the appeal with the planning inspectorate. So it needs a resolution from committee in terms of whether it would have been supported or whether it would have been refused had it been for you determination. It won't result in a decision on the application because it's going through the planning inspectorate.
Thank you. In that case,
Have we had this sent to us?
Yes, it's in the report pack. It's the first item to look at.
Yeah, well, I've seen that either, so there we are. So I'm not happy with the way in which this committee is deciding things without them being discussed.
first of all, forgive me for asking, but why haven't you seen payment?
Say what?
Why haven't you seen the payment?
I have no idea. I've had weeks without being able to get into any of my emails. Weeks.
Have you spoken to IT about this?
I have spoken to IT at length about it.
I'll pick it up outside the meeting room.
Yeah. I mean, I had weeks, literally weeks.
I hear what you're saying, but
5 weeks, and it's at least 5 weeks that I haven't been able to pick up emails. I would subject that. I don't. So that's a very difficult thing to say.
It is for, John Frank, so much the minute. Okay, check that everybody else is ready for payments. Yes, okay, good. Right, in that case,
Chair, may I come in? Can you hear me? I can't hear you. Can you hear me?
yes, we can.
You can hear me. Okay. Chair, reading through the paper, is this a different application to the one that I thought we determined where we had a visit and everything, whereby there was a problem whereby the developer didn't want to let us put the road through the development or leave access for it for the future. Is this a different one? I'm just a bit confused because it's very close to one I thought that we had determined. Could you just clarify that, please? Thank you.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Andrew? Can you hear? You can hear, right.
I can,
okay.
Chair. I can now. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, right. This is a different application for a different site.
It is definitely different. Okay, thank you for your clarification. Because it's very close to the other one, isn't it? Obviously.
Yes. But it is a different application on a different site.
Okay, fine. Thank you for that. Thank you, Chair.
No problem. Okay, right. I'm going to turn to the presenting officer. Oh, my apologies,
Chair,
my part didn't warn me.
sorry, Chair. It's in regards to councillor Rosemary North's position, which hopefully Josh will be able to sort out for you after the meeting, councillor. The issue or concern I have is that not having been able to, because of IT problems, being able to access the papers and reports for this committee, I wonder whether just listening to the presentations is sufficient for councillors to be able to form an opinion and vote.
I understand what you're saying, and I think that's something that we have to let Raven decide herself as to whether she will have sufficient information from the presentation to make a balanced decision. Rosemary, obviously, it's not something you can answer because you haven't heard the presentation.
No.
So, the only thing I can do is say to you, if you don't feel you've had a sufficient information or you're not clear on something, please ask and we'll try and get you the answers. Otherwise, you may wish to consider not voting on this occasion.
Right.
That's something for you to decide when you've heard all the information on the application.
Right.
Hopefully, you will have sufficient information to enable you to reach a balanced view. Okay. Mr. Hicks, good afternoon and welcome.
Good afternoon, thank you very much. Thanks. Thank you, Chairman.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I'll ask, sorry, that screen's not working.
I'll look at it.
Short pause whilst we get some more to the IT fund. You think we may have said the jurors?
It needs to be called.
You enjoy the tennis, so.
Yes, it's very strong. Thank you very much. So this is planning application 8/90/0035, which is an outline planning application with all matters for consent or means of access to the erection of up to 112 dwellings with public open space, landscaping, drainage system and vehicle access points off Chetton Road.
So I have to drop the device.
So as has just been outlined, the key consideration is to consider whether the planning committee would have resolved to grant planning permission subject to the conditions and planning obligations set out in this report, with the addition of a sustainability statement and petition. The determination of this committee will inform the council's approach to submitting evidence to the planning inspectorate, which is due to be heard by way of an informal hearing. The council's appeal statement must be submitted to the planning inspectorate by the 19th of December. This recommendation is to grant permission subject to the conditions and planning obligations set out in the report, with the addition of a sustainability statement and petition. So the application seeks outline consent with direction of up to 112 dwellings. All matters are reserved for future consideration except for the proposed means of access. During the course of the application, the number of dwellings has been reduced, initially down from 180 to 150, and then subsequently down to 112. This is now the final figure now proposed. Previous application, 112 dwellings was considered on this, 180 dwellings was considered by the planning committee in July 2019, and that was refused on visual and landscape grounds, but the applicant did not appeal. So just to introduce some slides of the site, here is the site outlined in red. You've got Chetton Road running along the southern edge of the site. Chetton Road is a classified Class C highway. Furland Farm is to the east. Just beyond Furland Farm is the Lincoln Lane site, the committee recently determined. Just a Google Earth view zoomed out, showing the site. So the recent Lincoln Lane application was in this location here. So this site lies to the west of that, and lies in these fields that are highlighted. And again, just a bit of context. So this shows the site in relation to existing developments. So in the purple, you've got the Nerald Farm allocation, which is now largely built out. And then just to the west of that was the site of the recent Lincoln Lane application, which forms part of that larger allocation. And then over here, the yellow colour, this is the State Road extension. So this report, we've had to consider cumulative impacts, in terms of landscape impact, highways, and some of those other matters that would arise from this development, cumulatively with the other developments that are going on. And this also shows the Pond Hills National Landscape in green. which at the closest point is about 2.3 kilometres away.
My colleagues can't hear me. You can remove simple.
So this is an extract from the local plan, which shows the site. See the sites here with the annotation TAU3. That is the allocated site in the local plan that shares this application site. So they are both on the same site with the same road frontage and the same point of access. The difference being that this planning application extends beyond the boundaries of that allocated site. So that allocated site was envisaged to provide about 45 dwellings. This obviously would be up to 112. And just again, by a bit of context, these purple lines is the SS2 site, which was the Nerrells Farm with the recent reserve matters phase that was considered by planning committee just to the east of this site. You'll also note slight difference to make out that the green crenellations here that run along the edge of the settlement boundary. That marks the green wedge, which is in the local plan as a designation. This is the Kingston Gap green wedge, on which the application frontage is on the western periphery of. And just to give a bit of information on that, the council has recently undertaken a green wedge review, which looks at all of the green wedge allocations. That has been carried out for the council by external consultants, and we have just received the draft recommendations from our consultants. And those are being reviewed prior to finalisation. The review has assessed this green wedge along with the others against the policy CP8 green wedge policy objectives. And the green wedge is recommended for retention, but with some boundary revisions. In respect to this green wedge, the review identifies that the purpose of the green wedge is to separate Taunton and Monkton Heathfield. The site area connects the countryside to the north of Cheddar Road, but has little connection to Monkton Heathfield. The presence of large agricultural buildings to the west of Lingford Lane and the east of the application site, and the presence of the housing allocation on this part of the green wedge reinforces this sense of separation from the remainder of the green wedge. So accordingly, it's been considered that this part of the green wedge on the periphery facing northwards does not perform well against the policy aims of the green wedge designation. And therefore, it is anticipated that this part of the green wedge would be recommended for deletion from the green wedge allocation.
Would you find that? That's all. Would you clearer define that? I take it you are talking of east of the road through to Chevron Iron?
Yes, so my understanding is that, can you see the pointer?
What's the pointer? I can't see the pointer, so that's why I'm.
Yeah, okay, so basically up to the Lingford Lane side.
Oh, I see it now, yes.
Yeah, going west from the Lingford Lane side to the western edge of this application site.
Yeah.
So it's just that stretch that runs along Trent Road.
Oh, that's to the west of that road, then, not the east of it.
To the west of the Lingford Lane side. So comprising the Perland Farm site frontage, the access to Perland Farm, and then the frontage of this site with Chetton Road. Does that make sense? So you can just make out the pointer along there, running along Chetton Road. So this part of the green wedge that borders the northern edge of the Lingford Lane site, that would be retained as green wedge
Right. Thank you.
It's therefore considered that development of this part of the greenway would not undermine the maintenance and protection of the wider allocated greenway area, and therefore we don't feel it can be upheld as a reason for refusal in principle against the proposal. This is just a comparison plan showing the site on the right-hand side compared to the site allocation. So it does show that it extends further north from the site allocation, with the increase to up to 112 dwellings, the 45 in the local plan allocation. In terms of the features of the site, it would be anticipated at reserve matters that there would be woodland planting along the eastern, northern and western boundaries. Suds located attenuation contours to the south end of the site. And just to give some context with heritage assets, this shows this gap here. This is the application site. Highlands Farmhouse is a Grade 2 listed building. King's Hall School to the west is a Grade 2 star building. And again, the application site in red, showing the relationship to Heskingham House, which is Grade 2 property, and it's a Grade 1 listed registered park and garden, which is also a special area of conservation and triple SI for the bat colony. This was the original indicative submitted as part of the 180 proposal. And that was the latest reduction of the framework plan. You'll note there were some discussions with the developer around the heights of the buildings, and they agreed with the principle of the northern end of the site, which is on the highest contours, being 2-storey buildings, and that's what's indicated on this plan with the darker shading at the top, which that would be negotiated with the reserve matters application, but that would be to ensure that the visual impact is kept to a minimum and it softens the edge of the development. This shows just some of the road and footpath connections in the area. So there's a small stretch of footpath linking Cats Lane to the west side with the other lane on the northern edge of the site. And then there's another footpath running alongside the Lingford Lane site to the east. In terms of footpath connectivity, there's a planning condition included in the recommendation that would ensure that connections by foot to footpaths and some of the surrounding routes are enhanced through the site. And this is just zoomed in from the indicative layout, showing the site entrance, what might be envisaged at reserve matter stage. It is envisaged that the that there would be hedgerow retained on the site frontage, which would either be replacement hedge or a transplanted, or from the transplanting of the existing hedge. And you will note that the dwellings on the site frontage are sort of set behind that, quite some way from the highway. This is just a topo showing the topography of the site. Generally, the site levels increase to the north, but with a little bit of a dip in the middle. So the highest points are the northeast and the northwest of the site. Those are the most sensitive parts of the site. And in terms of landscape impact, this is a view from up towards getting close to the national landscape that goes on the hills from here, and you can see the zoomed in section. So there would be quite distant views. The blue shading shows the extent of the full, what would have been the full 180 development, 180 dwelling development, which we considered was too great a landscape impact. The magenta shows what was in the TAU reallocation. So there are a range of views from surrounding areas, footpaths, roads, viewpoints, particularly from the hills to the north as well, as you're looking down on Taunton. This is just an example of what the impact would have been from the 180 dwelling scheme, and this is taken from the footpath close to the registered park and garden, Hesticombe House, showing the approximate roof lines where the 180 dwelling schemes be built out, and the roof lines would get up above the skyline at that point. And then this is another photo from that footpath looking in the same general direction. So you would have been able to see dwellings at this point, which was felt to be too much of an encroachment into the landscape to the north of the site. And that landscape has a close relationship to Hesticombe House, the park and garden, and the Quantock Hills national landscape. The effect of reducing down 112 and moving the dwellings further south, that significantly reduces that impact, you consider to be an acceptable level. This is another view from a footpath adjacent to Hesticombe House, looking south. So from this viewpoint, there would be very minimal minor impacts through the trees, through the hedgerow. And we've also got to bear in mind that there would be the woodland planting as well around the site, which over time that planting will mature and serve to screen development as well. This is a view from within the site looking south. This is tall trees, one of the properties adjacent to the site, and then these terrace dwellings are on the southern side of Chedham Road. So you can sort of see that this is about the central point of the site. You can see where the topography dips down. And this is from within the site looking west towards King's Hall School. And this again is within the site looking south towards the dwellings on the southern side of Chedham Road. And just go through a couple more slides. So these are views from Chedham Road, looking through the access to Burlington Farm. This is the property which abuts the site's tall trees, and the site sits in behind that, behind these trees, and behind that hedge line you can see. This is Burlington Farmhouse, which is grade 2 listed, also referred to in the report in the heritage section. And now we're just going to cover off the highway impacts. So I'll pass over to Sam Tell, my colleague from the highway department.
Thanks, Mike. So this is the approach if you're heading eastbound towards the access junction. So you're on Chedham Road here, just on the bed, on the next. Then this is the section of Chedham Road. So you've got parked cars, well, an old road lay-by. So parked cars for the residents in the houses opposite use. And on the next slide is the proposed access design. So as you can see, it's a priority T-junction design. As part of these works, that lay-by is being set back. So the existing residents opposite can still park safely off the road. The junction's been designed so it's in line with highway standards. So you've got visibility displays that are in excess of the standards required at the moment. The turning radii and access road into the site itself, again, is designed in line with the signs that council and state roads guidelines. And then coming out of the site, you've got 2 footways on either side. They then would replace where those hedges were and essentially lead across to the end of the lay-bys where there would be drop curbs and tactile pavings, pedestrians to cross over onto the existing footway network. This is a swept path analysis of tracking, drawing all the refuse collection vehicle leaving the site in a left turn out. So as you can see, it swings out. It is slightly over the other side of the carriageway. However, that's generally standard at the moment to try and reduce carriageway widths to ensure that vehicles travel and drivers aren't encouraged to travel at high speeds. So ensure vehicles travel at lower speeds. And the refuse collection vehicle drivers will be fully aware that they need to trained to know when they need to turn in and out. The next slide, we've got a left turn in. Again, that shows that it's achievable based on the current design. And then on the next slide, that's the left turn out. Earlier was the right turn in. This is the left turn out. They overhang slightly the right turn in. I described earlier works as well. And then the next slide. As you're aware from our committee back in the summer, the Lincoln Lane site, so this development here will enable pedestrians and cyclists to route through Lincoln Lane to John Merrill's and the local facilities and amenities down towards that southeast direction. And then also, as you're aware, Lincoln Lane is to be also a quiet route for pedestrians and cycles. And as part of this development, they're delivering a cycle track that will run along Cheddar Road to Parliament School, formerly Taunton Academy, which is shown on this slide. So this is the design is in line with the BFT's LTO 120 cycle infrastructure design guide, and would enable cycling to travel safely along Cheddar Road, both directions. And then access the wider network. They go through the Lincoln Lane side and then to the west. And the moment the cycle track would be finishing at the secondary school of Parliament Academy. But there are plans under the Connect Our Island Communities routes 2 and 11 to extend that further, which we would to link to further local facilities and amenities, which we've secured and agreed with the applicant or appellant soon to be the list for our site we're talking about today. They've agreed to a contribution of £234,000, which will be index linked, which will probably go up to roughly about 240k, which enables the work into that is for sustainable transport improvement. So it could go towards extending the cycle track further south from Parliament Academy, or it could go towards other improvements in the area, such as bus stop improvements, bus service improvements, generally anything sustainable related. And that's just the section which the site, so you can see where that lay-by is and where the vehicular access for the site, you can see the lay-by where, so just to the north of that is where the vehicular access for our site today is. And that's the cycle track that will be down to the secondary school. If the lane site doesn't come forward, then that 240,000 should be enough to deliver that section from the lay-by to the secondary school. And that's just the details of how cyclists and pedestrians would benefit, and then being able to cross over to secondary school on Wellsprings, leisure centre. See it?
Okay, so just moving on from highways, just to touch on a few of the other considerations. Apology and phosphates, we refer to section 16.8 and 6.1. There's an outline of the ecology issues and phosphates. So shadow HRAs have been submitted, agreed, and on. Phosphate mitigation would be secured by the purchase of phosphate credits, and such being designed within the scheme. Conditions 15 and 16 those matters. Planning obligations. So there are a range of planning obligations which would be secured via section 106. First of all, 25% of the dwellings as affordable homes. There is a consultation response from the Housing Enabling Officer, just providing a little bit of background on what they would be asking for in terms of the tenure of those. An education contribution of 1.6, well, £1,604,698, or 14,327.67p per dwelling, and that's spread across early years, primary, secondary, and SEND education provision. An NHS contribution of 50,028 towards local GP provision in response to the request from the NHS as set out in section 16.12.5. As Sam has just outlined, the highways contribution of £234,062 towards the provision of sustainable transport infrastructure in the North Taunton. And that's set out in more detail in section 16.7. And finally, the travel plan and future monitoring of the travel plan, and the maintenance of communal areas like open space, play, and the such drainage to mitigate the floods risk and phosphate outputs. So just to touch on the planning balance, which draws in the planning considerations against policies, taking into account the planning impact and other material considerations. That's in section 17.2 of the report. We're required to make a judgment as to whether or not the development accords with the development plan when it's read as a whole. And in this instance, while the development is located partially outside the allocated site, there are no policies explicitly instructing us to refuse on that basis. What we've got to do is to assess the benefits of the proposal and the planning impacts against the range of policies that we have. In that regard, we found a low level of harm to heritage assets adjacent to the site, which is at the low level of less than substantial although this can be mitigated to a degree with careful design solutions at reserve matter stage, there is still likely to be a low level of harm remaining. That harm would technically be contrary to policy CPA's core strategy, which seeks to protect, conserve or enhance heritage assets. Given that the council is unable to demonstrate the supply of housing land, the tilted balance in the NPPF would apply. In these circumstances, planning permission should only be refused where the harm arising is clearly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits of the scheme. In this instance, the benefits of the scheme are considerable, and for the reasons set out in the report, any harm identified would fall short of the level of harm that would warrant the refusal of the application, and any adverse impacts would not significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. So this next slide just touches on just mentioned now with the planning balance, looking at compliance with the development plan, the planning impacts, and the material considerations such as the principal development, landscape, heritage, community, and highways impacts. So the recommendation is to resolve that whether or not have the council been in a position to determine the application that the council would have approved, subject to the conditions in the report with the addition of a sustainability statement, the planning obligations outlined in section 18.1 of the report. And just to note, an amendment to the recommendation, the phosphate credit reservation certificate referenced in section 18.1 is no longer required due to a change in policy. So the recommendation is to seek the committee's view on whether or not they would have supported the application or not, subject to those conditions and planning obligations. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to the public speakers now. So the first individual on my list is Matthew Lundquist. My apologies, sir, if I mispronounced your name.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. With reference to previously submitted documents to the council from the Lundquist family of Upper Sheldon, Oak Lot, Upper Sheldon, Chipping, I would like to highlight 5 points, given 3 minutes. First, attritional pressure and democratic evasion. Over 7 to 8 years of serial reapplications by Gladman Developments Limited demonstrates attritional pressure to exhaust local resistance. Escalation to central government seeks to bypass local opposition and the democratic planning process. Second, no housing or public interest justification. There is no objectively demonstrated unmet housing need in the TDBC region, and the development cannot meet the imperative reasons of overriding public interest test. Public opposition is overwhelming, and additional harms to traffic, safety, and local infrastructure further negate any claim of public benefit. Third, predatory development reputation. Gladman has a documented history of exploiting planning loopholes and overwhelming councils, causing stress, community disruption, and loss of confidence in the planning system. Fourth, misalignment with community values. As a national commercial entity with no local ties whatsoever, Gladman shows no genuine interest in local welfare, heritage, well-being, or ecological integrity. Fifth, severe unmitigable ecological impact. The 112 home development would produce significant light pollution, possibly over 1,000 light sources, fragment habitats, and disrupt lesser horseshoe bed populations. Proposed mitigation is scientifically unsound and insufficient. I repeat the 5 points: housing pressure and traffic evasion, no housing or public interest justification, predatory developer reputation, misalignment with community values, and severe unmitigable ecological impact. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chris. The next public speaker I have is Marcus Walker.
I'm here today to register my protest at the proposed development of 112 houses top of Chedden Road. This development is less than a quarter of a mile away from the already agreed estate on Nerrells 3, the 292 houses. On Tuesday, April the 15th of this year, your committee heard impassioned pleas from many concerned residents, parish councillors and even other county councillors, all demanding that a link road be retained through the Nerrells 3 estate to help alleviate the inevitable traffic chaos that new housing developments will create on Chedden Road and in the parishes of Chedden Fitzpaine and West Monkton. You heard of the traffic problems which already exist down Rowford Hill and on the lanes leading into Chedden Fitzpaine. You heard of the problems which pedestrians and cyclists have going to Chedden Fitzpaine Primary School. You heard of at least one serious accident involving a school child walking to school on Rowford Hill and the need to call the air ambulance to this incident. You heard of the cumulative impact that both the Staple Grove development and the Nerrells 3 estate will have on a road infrastructure already not fit for purpose. You will recall that on that day in April, your committee accepted our argument and voted to retain the link road through Nerrells 3. Inexplicably, this vote was overturned because it did not fit your budget plans and you were afraid of it going to appeal. Why is this decision so important? It means that virtually all traffic wishing to travel north towards the A38 and the motorway from Staple Fitzpaine, Staple Grove, Nerrells 3, and now the new estate, they will all be directed down Rowford Hill and onto the lanes of Chedden Fitzpaine. This new proposed development of 112 houses represents an additional 200 cars using the local road infrastructure. As chairman of Chedden Fitzpaine Parish Council, I have a duty of care for parishes, parishioners and local community. This duty of care goes up the chain of command to you as county councillors. The health and safety of people must be of paramount importance. No one is against the building of new houses, but this really is not the right place for this development. Please take the wise and sensible decision and reject this plan.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. The next speaker I've got is Kate Wilson.
It's Christmas, and if this was a poem, it would be called What Will It Take? Because this is what came to mind when I was thinking about what to say at today's meeting. I'm not going to go into the many objections and reasons that are already on the website. And I'm not going to apologise if some of what I say is difficult listening and perhaps a little bit uncomfortable for you, because I only have 3 minutes. What will it take? Because I'm sorry to say I've lost faith in you, and I'm here again because I need to tell you how things really are in real life, not on paper, how both urban and rural communities feel the need to police you because of the abuse of land and nature in our communities. It's fair to say that I lost respect at the last planning committee meeting when I sat before you in April, hearing equally impassioned pleas. I know many of you are good councillors. My judgment is not sweeping. We heard the common sense and concern from many of you, but your voices were drowned by those who had already made their minds up, from those who should have known better. Indeed, Chedden Fitzpaine is now the smallish parish, but if we were bigger and richer, we would be threatening you with legal action too, because we are so tired of fighting for what is obvious to us. As councillors, you will know that CFBC took legal advice after the Narrows 3 hearing, and our barrister sent you a note of his opinion. It was acknowledged, but we have never had a formal reply. Number one, that in essence, there are 2 points. Number one, it is unlawful to be guided or base planning decisions on anticipated appeal costs or expected outcomes. Number two, planners do not have to be guided by industry standard traffic reports. Local knowledge should be taken into consideration and can override such reports. Legal precedents support this and are clear that local knowledge is a material consideration. 9 days before Christmas, I would much rather be at home, but I am here because I need to make you listen and somehow let you know the very real danger on our roads, the rage and the speed we see on a daily basis from drivers. Ever the optimist, I'm asking myself again, what does it take for you to see this in order to make good decisions for our communities? So I'm going to take this opportunity to invite you all over to my house and a walk around our village. You are all invited. Because I don't know what else to do. Because for Christmas, I want to be able to go back to my community and tell them that we did our best and it was heard, it landed, they listened, they actually listened, and this planning application was rejected because it didn't come up to scratch. It shouldn't feel like a favour for you to be acting in our best interests. It's your job.
And the next speaker on my list is Karen Good.
Good afternoon. There are many reasons this development should not happen. Proximity to the Quantock Hills, proximity to Hestercombe House with its important bat population, loss of Grade 1 farmland, which in today's uncertain times would be criminal, but above all, is an objection which has been constantly raised by many local people right from the start. Traffic, 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 a voice the council has repeatedly and deliberately ignored. Do not use the excuse that you are only here to consider this development. You must look at the wider picture. The area is rural, the lanes are narrow and single track. There are no pavements and they are unlit. And at this time of year, they are muddy. They are prone to flooding in Rowford, Chedden Fitzpaine and Maidenbrook Lane, flooding deep enough to stop the passage of vehicles. You have already compounded this problem by allowing the development of Narrows 3 to go ahead with only one entrance, when the developer cynically dropped the number of houses from just over 300 to 292, which allowed them to argue that point. They dropped not the main entrance onto Bossington Drive, which has already been purposely upgraded and linked to existing infrastructure, but they enter onto Chedden Road, filtering traffic through the lanes, which are not suitable and are already at capacity. The idea that only 10 cars an hour will use that route is fanciful, and the idea that pushing the active travel policy will encourage the public to walk, wheel or cycle is equally fanciful, as was the traffic model that came up with that figure. Many of you will not be familiar with the area, as the site visit instructed for the Narrows 3 development was engineered to keep you away from what is happening in this part of the North Kingdom, particularly outside Chedden Fitzpaine Primary School at drop-off and pick-up times. There is a website, it's called Save Chedden. If some of you could Google that and look at the pictures that have been taken over the past of the flooding, of the traffic chaos. When Yallans Hill was closed for 10 weeks, there were cars halfway up the hedge, there were cars in ditches, people's walls were knocked down through Chedden Fitzpaine. Eventually, Maidenbrook Lane which runs through the conservation area of Chedden Fitzpain, had to be made into a one-way system, and the police were deployed at the school to ensure the safety of everyone. Please, if you're not listening, use your eyes and look at that website, because this is the reality for the residents of North Taunton.
Next speaker, of course, is Councillor David Hall.
Thank you, indeed, Chairman. I'll stand if I may, because I'm slightly to the side of the room. And so here we go again. Once again, you're faced with a planning application that fails to address the significant impact on the northern rural road network, particularly around Chedden Fitzpain, Lucentford, Godman, Sidbrook. There was no map there that showed you the routes going north. They only show you south, the same as the previous application. And significantly, this application also overlooks the safety implications on Chedden Fitzpain Primary School, which is no more than 100 metres from their site, down a very steep hill. It wasn't even referred to in the officer's presentation. It was marked on the map purely because we were using the National Geographic map. Otherwise, you wouldn't know there was a primary school that people have to walk to, are walking to, and where there is a real danger to people by increased traffic from this site. So only a few months ago, approval was granted by yourselves for 292 houses without securing the critical road infrastructure that was needed to avoid such growth impact. And now with another proposal for 112 homes before you, again with no improvements for the roads going north, none of that money you talked about is going to protect people to the north of this site. No safety measures, no consideration for cumulative effect on residents, and certainly no impact upon the school of Chedden Fitzpain. Previously, you reached a decision, the right decision, and then you changed it. You were advised by officers that they could not defend it. That was the result that would have long-term consequences, including the consequence of what you agreed today. We could have avoided all this. But what we should not do is repeat the mistake. At some point, we have to stand up for our Somerset small community. At some point, we have to try to seek our minor rural roads, and most importantly, safeguard the children who walk along them every day to school. You can show that today. This decision is not for you to make. It is your recommendation. You should recommend that this application is refused. You should stand up and protect those communities, protect those rural areas, protect those children. Because at some point we have to, and it's not today. When is it going to be? Members, you should recommend rejection of this application and inspect it.
And the next speaker on my list is the patient, the applicant, Tom Scully. You are here virtually, is that right, Mr. Scully?
Hello, can you hear me
Bear with me a moment.
Apologies, can you hear me now?
That's better. Try again, Mr. Scully.
Good afternoon, members. My name is Tom Scully and I'm a planner at Gladman. This application was submitted in October 2019, and since then the proposals have been subject to rigorous scrutiny by officers and specialist consultees. We have reached a position where all consultees confirm they have no objection to the proposal, and we welcome the considered opinion of your officer that had the council had been able to determine the application, officers would have recommended approval. This recommendation is of course consistent with the council's decision to allocate part of the site for housing in the adopted local plan and the site's overall conformity with the development plan. The National Planning Policy Framework outlines the government's objective to significantly boost the supply of housing and to provide much needed new homes to ensure this generation can have same home ownership opportunities as their parents. To this end, the provision of 112 high quality homes, including 25% affordable housing on a sustainable site that would form a logical, well-related extension to Taunton, should be seen as a significant benefit of the proposals. Your officers and consultees agree that no unacceptable impacts arise from the development. In particular, We listened carefully to the concerns previously raised around landscape and visual impact, and in response, reduced the number of dwellings proposed and overall development area. Natural England have confirmed with the delivery of phosphates mitigation, there will be no adverse impact on the Somerset Levels and Moors Ramsar site. There is also no objection in respect to impacts on Hestercombe House SAC and the Lesser Horseshoe Bats subject to specific mitigation. The Council's Conservation Officer concludes there will be no harm to the setting at Hestercombe House, and the case officer considers any limited impacts on other nearby heritage assets are clearly outweighed by the public benefits of the scheme. The local highway authority raised no objection, and indeed the proposals contribute £244,000 towards sustainable transport improvements in the north of Taunton. The application proposals represent a sustainable development in social, economic and environmental terms. Taunton is the largest and most sustainable settlement in Somerset, and new residents will have great access to services and facilities by walking and cycling. The scheme will also deliver substantial areas of green infrastructure and open space, including new equipped play provision, as well as achieving a biodiversity net gain of over 10%. A further material consideration is the Council's 5-year housing land supply position, the subsequent engagement of the tilted balance in national planning policy, and the fact that the most important local policies for determining the application are out of date. Under the tilted balance, the relevant decision-making test is whether the harms of granting planning permission would significantly demonstrably outweigh the benefits of doing so. In this instance, all technical issues have been addressed and there are no unacceptable harms that arise. Therefore, I respectfully ask the committee to confirm that had it been in position to determine this application, it would have granted permission as recommended by the officer, and so that this may be accurately reflected in the council's case at appeal. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, members. Start with the review case session. Is there anything you'd like from that one before?
So, I think one of the speakers referred to the applicant, the nature and how the applicant operates in terms of the development. The applicant, their personal circumstances and how they run their business is not a material consideration for this committee. The fact there have been repeat applications in terms of wearing the council down isn't a material consideration. What is material is what the differences are, what the considerations were last time, and what is still relevant for how members consider the material considerations this time.
Thank you. For ease of everybody, the material considerations are easily on the screen in the normal manner. Just might help with the discussion as we progress. Colleagues, do you have any questions or queries for the officer? Let's discuss.
If I may, can I seek clarification, Mr. Chairman? This application is before us in a very specific context, as I see it. Our role today is therefore about governance, risk, infrastructure protection, and not reopening the detailed planning board. Am I right?
In defending the appeal against non-destination, which is where we are at the moment. Apologies, someone online. So because they've appealed on non-determination, we have to, as an authority, go back and say what decision we would have made had the decision been with us for making a decision. Having gone through all the material considerations, the case officer has put forward what they would have recommended to you as committee. So the recommendation that's before you at the moment is that officers consider we would have granted planning permission, subject to the list of conditions that are down there and the list of obligations that we've set out on the previous slides. It's down to members to consider if they would have agreed with that recommendation, in which case we go back to the planning inspectorate and say, this is what we would have done, these are the conditions we would have recommended, this is what we're asking for in terms of the section 106. Ultimately, then it's down to the inspector to determine if all of those asks in 106 are reasonable, if all those conditions are reasonable, and it's with the inspector to find and give a decision on it. So whatever the outcome of this meeting is, we're not granting it today. If it gets granted, we're not refusing it today. We are just saying what the committee's recommendation would have been, and then it's down to the planning inspector to determine.
Okay. Okay, next, councillor Collins is for Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll try and project so that it can be heard clearly. This is a curious one, I think. Apologies if I missed it in the papers, but I'd be quite interested to know as to why we've actually effectively lost control over this one, how the application has dragged on for such a long time that the applicant has been in a position to appeal for non-determination. I think that's quite important. And as I say, the key point here is that we have now lost control of this particular one, and the committee is therefore in sporting parlance on the back foot. So we have to sort of try and put ourselves in a position as to where we would have been had this come to us in the normal course of events. And I think we all remember the debate over the Nerrells application a few months ago, when there was a considerable amount of debate and concern raised over the impact of traffic on this relatively small road. I've just been on Google Maps. The road hasn't improved since I last looked at it. And so therefore we've got, and I can't remember how many houses that Nerrells are coming in, several hundred, we're sticking several more on top of that. So what I'd like to know is that this is an allocated site, which again makes it slightly tricky, and the developers come back and ask for a slice on top of that. So I would like to know, given that it's an allocated site and therefore acceptable in council terms, or was 10 or 12 years ago when the plan, how many houses that would have been, and therefore what is the difference between what would have been an allocated site and actually what's before us today? I'm still not happy about the pressure on the traffic on the lanes, and I know, you know, people who say they're all going to Taunton, they won't know. People find the quickest way out. I mean, they'll be through sheds and all sorts. But those are two key questions: why we've lost control over it, and actually what is the realistic difference between the allocated site in general terms and what we're looking at today.
Yeah, so so the confirmed members, the reason it's been appealed on non-determination is when we were looking at it, one of the earlier slides showed the green wedge effectively following a line across the bottom of the site. As part of the local plan review that we're doing, going Somerset wide, there was a green wedge review, and it was considered that we couldn't make a decision on this one until that review had been concluded. So we have advised the applicants for this one that we wouldn't be signing it until the conclusion of that green wedge review. The green wedge review ended up saying a thin strip along this bit of land isn't going to be sufficient. Actually, we should probably take it out as part of the local plan. So that's now concluded, which again is another reason why we're saying there isn't going to be an impact on the green wedge, because we are accepting we would probably be losing that bit. We also had to negotiate with the applicant in terms of what the phosphate solution was for this site. That's now all been resolved. So it is now ready for a decision, but because they've appealed, we can't now make a decision on it because it's gone to the planning inspector for the decision. So that's the reason a decision didn't get made earlier.
So just on that point, then presumably we asked for an extension, which is acceptable practice, which must have been refused.
We did ask for an extension. They did agree it to start off with. The green wedge review took longer than anticipated. So they refused further extensions and then went to the planning inspector.
Right.
In terms of footway and cycleway, so this plan does show the arrangement, I think, has been agreed through the Linkford application. So effectively, this plan shows in the sort of white section, you can see the lay-by that exists at the moment. The bit just south of the lay-by is a joint ped and cycle link that goes across that side of the road. An earlier detailed layout plan showed the access into the site, the pavement and crossing points provided either side of the lay-by, and connection into this infrastructure. So as Linkford has been approved, this would be coming forward as part of Linkford. In the event that Linkford doesn't come forward for any reason, there is a financial contribution currently agreed in the heads terms with the applicant, 240,000, which would deliver this in the event that Lincoln didn't come forward. So there are improvements shown in terms of pet and cycle safety and connectivity as part of the application that we've been negotiating through the process. But again, it's for members to have a look at and see if that is what you said.
And that increase in housing.
Oh, sorry,
give or
yes,
take.
so the, you got the allocated site plan? Yeah, so the allocated area for this development was 45, approximately 45.
4,512, 57, isn't it?
Yeah, we're just trying to find the right slide there. So the allocated site, that one, there we go. So effectively the bottom L-shaped bit that you can see that kicks out first, if you drew a straight line going across, that's the extent of the allocated area. They were suggesting up to about 45 in that area. Effectively, it's a longer elongated rectangle bit on the top of that. The question that we were asking Constantine is, as a result of that, because that goes further out to the countryside, is there an issue in terms of wider landscape impact? Is there an issue in terms of wider visual harm? As you can see, the red outline goes a lot further than where the development is proposed to go. They've pulled it back quite significantly. They've put sort of landscape corridors around the edges, and the brown sort of highlight along the edge is where they're suggesting reduced height properties, so single story units across that edge to reduce the visual impact. And based on all of that, the landscape officer, the ecologists, everyone like that, and they're not raising objections now to the potential increase. And given that we haven't got very land supply of housing, again, we're not objecting to the increase in numbers. And the highway response with the traffic generation as a result of 112 isn't to the extent that it was a highway safety objection.
Okay, now just, sorry, just one more question. If I mean, the two fields at the top, I can't read what they're down as. So they've been retained as agricultural.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. There's a planning condition to ensure those are retained as part of the reserve access.
And is that anything to do with the bats?
That was
Maximum condition for bats?
That was primarily landscape impact to mitigate landscape visual impact.
But that's not controlled by other conditions, so. just-
Yeah, I mean, it's how you manage the habitat around these areas. It's quite important for bats because they have to forage along it. And I think that would be something I think we probably need, would be doing up. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you for that. Mr. Chairman, might I please come back on the issue here? Because I think that we want clarification.
You are on my list.
Yes, no, it's on the particular speaker here.
Yeah.
The comment was made that landscape was one of the objections for us before. So we were waiting until the green wedge was reviewed.
Correct.
The comment was made, now that that green wedge position has been concluded, was the word that was used.
The report has been concluded.
The report has been concluded. It has material weight, I guess, but it has not been concluded and accepted as the new green wedge. At the moment, the de facto green wedge is still what exists.
Yeah.
So don't be misled, fellow councillors. It may be going to happen. It's not gone yet.
I think the point was the extent of the green wedge relative to this side is along the front boundary only. So it doesn't include all of the field passes to the back. It's a linear strip across the front of this side, across the front of the barn next door. You've got
That the access goes through.
yeah. So the green dot that you can just about see along that boundary,
Yeah.
that is the element of the green wedge that's part of this application.
Yes, but I'm just aware that it's not concluded yet. It's only the draft report that's been concluded.
It's,
The draft report has been concluded.
Yeah.
To my knowledge, there's not been any decisions to adopt that report.
if we adopted, it will form part of the new local plan. So the value, yeah, the impact we value of Green Wedge and elements of the Green Wedge have been assessed as part of the local plan, and it was determined that this element didn't function as the Green Wedge would be expected to function, and therefore the harm that is removed is not being met.
Bring those people to, on it, and let them speak, and then I'm going to for a quick, 5 minute.
Or should I wait that all actually?
Oh, right.
Made a mistake, I don't ask people.
My apologies, we're going to call a 5 minute.
For me, sorry.
Oh, Derek, come on.
Thank you. Would you like to start again?
Well, like I was saying, it's very conflicting for me because not only is this site double the amount of houses that was originally the allocation for this site, which was originally agreed by the council in the local plan. But on the other hand, the number of houses that's been proposed has been reduced. The plan that they put forward and the mitigation they put forward, in my mind, generally looks fairly okay as a planning site. The biggest problem I've got at the moment and the biggest issue that I've got is the cumulative effect of the traffic in that area. After the quite controversial application at Darrell's last time, and we've only got the one access point, that's added additional traffic onto this road network. This is also going to increase traffic onto that road network, and it's getting closer and closer to the primary school that is there as well. I am very, very concerned that the road network in that area, and I know we get all the professional road reports, everything else that goes with it, but as has been told by some of the members of the public here today, local knowledge is key. Some of these roads are just not going to be able to take the traffic, not only going in the direction, as been pointed out, in one direction out of the town, but also in the opposite direction that no plans have been given for. And I remember in a previous application, we actually asked for that opposite direction, and that wasn't forthcoming either. So I'm very conflicted. The site itself, with the houses on the site, I have little worry about. I have concern.
Thank you.
But it's the effect on the local network. It's giving me the biggest headache.
Yeah, okay. Our technical consultees over it.
Speak up,
As chair, I am obliged to point out that our technical consultees over it do not agree with your assessment.
That's fine. I don't agree with that.
Worth just setting out what cumulative assessment was
Yeah.
considered as part of the.
Please do.
So, that's a bit of background. So when this application came in 2019, the 180 dwellings, the Highway Authority raised no objection. This application, due to the landscaping issue, then resubmitted in 2020 for 150 dwellings. The Highway Authority raised no objection again. So now for 112 dwellings, obviously the impact significantly less than what was previously submitted. So therefore, the Highway Authority did raise an objection again. In terms of the benefits of this site, pedestrians will be able to route through the site and then link to either the public right of way to the north, or go up through and then go on to link that section of Linford Lane leading towards Cheddar Fitzpatrick that doesn't have the footway along there. So you reduce that section that pedestrians would have to walk because they would be able to cut through the site instead. So there are some benefits for pedestrians, and also linking to the up the Cheddar to the further north. There's an unnamed track that goes up there and then there's a public right of way that heads eastwards towards Cheddington's Payne again, so they're not quite the further extent if you go north from where the track goes and then you then cut eastwards down. That view like that, yeah.
Still no on the road.
Well, I just quickly come back as well.
You may.
I appreciate that there's been several applications and they haven't put any objections forward. But does that include the cumulative effects of the Narrows that was only approved in April? When was the last survey done? And was it done after the Narrows one was done in April?
This side, no, because the impact had already been accepted. But when that application was put in, they did consider background growth and they used background growth factors to take into account the local plan allocation of the area. And that assessment work there found that it wouldn't be a severe impact on the MPPN. And to be clear, if there's something to be severe, the highway grounds or the MPPN in terms of traffic queuing, etc., it really needs to be severe. It's really severe, not just a few cars queuing with the development.
I'm going to bring Norman because I know it's on this point, and then we'll go back to my list of people I had to courtesy to interview.
Specifically on this point, Mr. Chairman, it is comparatively recent that we have adopted a different highways policy of not bringing new roads. And it was materially quite important with the consideration of the 292 houses at Linkford. So can I ask, when the 180 houses were put in, we still had a proposed relief road running up through Nels to Lane. Surely that would have been material consideration for you to say there would not be traffic concern because there would be a relief road there. And that has changed now. So now you're looking at it with your new comments, not because you gave it a clear bill of health previously, but because you looked at it with no relief road and it is completely acceptable with the present cumulative conditions.
We are satisfied at present that the impact wouldn't be severe in terms of the impact. Yeah, yes. In terms of that relief road, well, that was again aspired. It wasn't part of the local plan allocation, the Linkford Lane side. So that's worth bearing in mind as well. So when this application do their background growth factors, they consider all the developments in the area back when they did that assessment, went to the 180, 150 dwellings, therefore now we look at 112, the highway authority are still satisfied.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember this when it came to SWT planning, West planning in 2019. And I remember mainly the discussion, well, a lot of the discussion that I took part in was all around the highway issue. And there was a lot of disquiet about it then. That was before okaying the 292 extra homes. And I do know this stretch of road because I walk up from my house all the way up to Chedden Road, Staunton Green on a Friday. And I visit Testicum regularly. So I use the road through there. Not me, I don't drive, Clubby. So to me, this feels very real, the sort of impacts that we're talking about. And I've said previously on the Nerrells thing, there's a lot of local knowledge that we disregard at our peril. So looking at this and what the proposed mitigation is, it's like 234,000, which is probably a drop in the ocean, might get you a little bit of a cycle track somewhere. I won't address any of the issues around the sheer volume of cars going through that area or the safety matters as you head into the village of Cheddon and with the school and everything. It's not going to touch the sides there. There's hardly any. When you go up there, I mean, I think, maybe I should stop and wait for a bus. Meh, don't bother. Literally, I can walk all the way down, all the way back again, all the way up again. There ain't no bus. So I'm like, I'm not seeing what the mitigation is. I'm really not. Maybe you could clarify what can you get for 234 grand? Is it just a bit of a cycle track? Can you get a new bus service for that? I very much doubt it. It just doesn't seem to me that the mitigation has been thought through. And I think that's fundamentally because highways and the rest of the world who actually live on Earth are on totally different pages. So, you know, your assessment, highways assessment, just as I don't know where that comes from. The local assessment is, you know, it's a very, very narrow road. It feels like a rural road, even on Cheddar Road. And then you get out into the reality and you're just going to be piling on hundreds more cars. And it just doesn't, you know, it is slightly terrifying. So I think, and you know, unless you can explain what the amazing mitigation is, I think that I think we'd be forced to conclude that there would be severe cumulative impacts, as Andy said. Be different. If this was a 45 home car-free development, well, that's a different matter, isn't it? But it's 112. They're all going to have 2 cars, aren't they? And yeah, they might occasionally have a little stroll. They might occasionally get on the bike, but not everybody can cycle. Not everybody has great mobility. They may have to drop kids here, there, and everywhere. We don't know where these people are going to work, what they're going to be doing during the day. You know, they're going to be there's potentially loads more traffic up north through Cheddar. None of this has been actually addressed at all.
Again, bringing back how the establishing quantities in this matter, the quantities in the necessary highways are defined. And I'm sorry to say we don't agree with okay, I've got two other councillors still on the list that haven't spoken, and sorry, and Andy. Okay, so Andy, do you want to speak as well? Yeah, okay, hang on. The list is ever increasing. You're all on then. I haven't missed anybody yet. Not today anyway. Derek.
Yeah, well, I'm going to recap on some of the things that Andy and others have said in relation to the site itself. If this wasn't an allocated site, I suspect most of us would regard this as an undesirable intrusion into the open countryside of the North of Taunton. But it is an allocated site. Yes, it was allocated with 45, now they're after 112, albeit a row back of 180. Should we allow 45 to 112? Tempted to say no, because it's put in a plan as 45, but the reality is tilted balance, lack of 5-year land supply, houses don't go there, they're going to go somebody else. We would ideally want them to be. And I think we're probably all realising the reality that in terms of the numbers and the extent of the encroachment of this beyond what was initially allocated, it probably is one of those we have to say, well, the site itself, the number itself is something we'd have to live with. That's just the reality of it. But it does come back to the highways, doesn't it? Of course it comes back to the highways. You know, I was one of the people who spoke vocally at the first meeting when we considered the Narrows 3 about the fact that the travel plan that went with that didn't appear to deal whatsoever with traffic coming up the site and turning right and going up towards Cheddar. We had analysis of things like, you know, the impact upon junctions on the other side of Taunton, but nothing considering the reality of what happened when they came out and turned right. My particular concern there was that if traffic coming out the Lingford Lane site was faced with a bottleneck ahead of it on the east-west part of Cheddar Road, there was a particular reason why those cars would wish to turn right and go up through Cheddar. It has to be said, this one, given where it is, the situation is slightly different. It might not be substantially different in terms of distance from the Narrows 3 site, but traffic coming out of this site should, moving to my next point, should naturally, I appreciate not all of it, but should have more reason to accept the fact it should turn right and go down Cheddar Road than to turn left, go through the bottleneck that I've just spoken about, and then get up into Upper Cheddar. The real problem I have with this, now we can come back to the Google images, Google Street View, which shows the image from the bottom of Cats Lane on the corner. Yeah. Okay, if the one that sort of spins around and looks back down towards Cheddar Road, back towards Burley School. Okay, go on. Right. That's the good event. But lots of us in this room will know what we're talking about at that point. That road there, we all know what it is. That is a historic, effectively a country lane, which demarks the current northern boundary of Taunton, where Prizewood has been built up to. There are places along there where 2 vehicles can pass, but equally there are points where they can't. And if the cameraman here was to spin around to the right and look back towards Purland School, there is a point where they can't. It just seems to me that if also, this is crying out for the carriageway being improved, at least as far until the entrance to this site. If, as you come out of this site, if it goes ahead, on turn right, if you've then got sufficient space for vehicles to pass in both directions around the corner and down Chedden Road, it might not be perfect. Of course, there are still going to be vehicles that come out and turn left and nip through the lanes, but it's surely crying out for it. A welcome cycle paths, a welcome footways and crossings and all the active travel stuff, of course I do. But the idea that there's going to be such significant development in this area and just not sort that corner, so that people are going to come out and turn right and have this little bit of, not good enough highway. I appreciate that we try and disincentivize people from driving fast by having carriages that aren't that wide, but there's a difference between disincentivizing people from going fast by not having overly wide carriageways and having them so tight that you cause not chaos. You can just imagine really, really annoying situations here on that corner. And you know what? If I was coming out of there, and let's say, I don't know, I work in Hinkley Point or something like that, and then I come out of that side, look to the right, see people blocked up around the place, and think, I'll turn left, I'll go through the lanes. And I think this would make a difference. You can't be beyond the wit of man. I feel ultimately that although from a planning point of view, a lot of good work has been done in terms of rejigging the site, moving the development forward a bit, all those kind of things that we've heard about. Balancing that with the sensitivity of the 5-year land supply issue. I just think it comes down to a highway point, which is, I hear what highways say. They say, well, in NPPF terms, this might, it's not a severe impact. Maybe ultimately that's the problem, that a significant impact, a notable impact, an impact which people feel on the ground is different from something which is categorized in the national context as being severe. But I still think there's a lot more that could be done there. Whether it's enough to make me vote against the proposal, I don't know, but I don't like that corner.
Okay, thank you. Lawrence, especially want to. Thank you for allowing me to ask 2 questions beforehand. Isn't Derek a good speaker? He started off, but then lost for The reality is, I remember that view with a hedge when I cycled to school into his fields. When that estate was built, Pat Lyde was a councillor here, and he did the highways. And I remember him saying to me after church one day, we've got the extra strip there to widen the road for a North Taunton Relief Road. And that's why, from Lingford Corner to King's Hall Gate, there's this beautiful section of road that we've all seen dozens of times. Now, I hope you've all driven down through from here, down through Chetton Road at 9 o'clock in the morning, or 8:30 in the morning, or even any time for that matter. There are cars parked all over the place. It's a big estate road, and it is not a quick road to go. We've heard that technical reviews have been done by the highways, and I quite agree. They've obviously done an excellent job and got on the right numbers. But the only technical bit of highway equipment I know that tells me about road traffic is my sat nav. And I know if I sit outside of here with my sat nav and want to go north or south on the motorway, or outside of the Lingford entrance, and I want to go north or south on the motorway, it sends me through Chetton. And that's the technical advice I'm giving. Now, maybe that's modern technique rather than that. Or maybe it's just the particular sat nav I'm using. I don't know. But it does tell me that that route through Taunton is blocked up. Mitigation and our new highways that we will catch the bus, walk, etc. People were sold the dream, and I was as well, that we put bus lanes in so that we can jump onto a bus and we can wave at our friends as they're in the traffic jam and we get driven past them on the bus. It'll be quicker, and it might even save us some money as well. Well, Caroline has said, what about buses up through this area? Buses are a problem up through that area. They can't move anywhere very quickly, quite frankly. And now with no link road, they don't move anywhere. 45 houses when there was a spine road up through and a reef road was okay. And in the present situation, as Derek said, maybe up 112 is okay. I seem to remember at the last meeting with Lingford, nobody was really objecting to the houses, Mr. Chairman. We accept that houses are needed. What we want is a decent system to cope with the cars that come off of it. These cars will come off of here, and the majority of them will turn left and head to get away, I suspect, that way, unless they're actually walking in Taunton. And if they're taking children to school on a wet day, I can't see them walking up through that route and down through Lingford, walking up through the new footpath here or cycleway on this road, and then walking through the Lingford Lane development down to Nels, any more than they'd want to walk down Roadford Road. So I'm sorry, until somebody puts forward some serious road improvement to cope with the traffic, and the only way left to do road improvement now is through Goosenford and Jedburgh, because we've blocked the other route. I can't see that we should allow extra development here. Westminster Parish Council has SITs. In May 24, they had SITs in Goosenford. There was 1,241 cars a day for 20 days going through. When the motorway is closed for one reason or another, which it seems to be quite regularly, that number doubles and trebles quite easily, depending on where their sat nav's taken as to where the accident is. It is chaos in Lupton Heathfield, so we're blocked any which way we go. So I guess people, if they buy the new houses, will just have to leave their cars behind and walk without any road improvements. Thank you, Gather. I can't support it, Mr. Chairman.
No, always important to hear you.
No, sorry about that.
Andy Sullivan.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to ask a question about the 10% biodiversity net gain. I couldn't see it in the officer's written report, but obviously there must be something done on that. I'd like to find out what are they proposing. Is it on-site mitigation or off-site mitigation? Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, so the application was submitted before biodiversity net gain became a mandatory requirement. So that's why they haven't had to go through the full current BND system. But the applicant had been able to demonstrate that they would nevertheless be able to provide a 10% net gain. And that's partially required for the VAT application as well.
So will that be on site? Will that be on site, Michael?
Yes, it would. There is a condition for the BATs, condition 21 and condition 22 relating to BATs, and that ensures habitat enhancements within the site to mitigate the impacts on bats. And that will essentially provide the 10% net gain, but it's through a different mechanism that's across the BNG system.
So the new rules that have come into force, what you're saying is they put their application slightly before the new rules came into existence. Is that what you're saying?
Like I was saying, all time. 2019 was a long time before.
Oh, so you're going back to 2019, are we? Okay. From the original application, is it? Not from when this one was put in?
It's done on the original application.
It's
when the first application was back.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Half what I want to say has already been taken up by Councillor Cavill. And I know what you're going to say. Highways have given their verdict. In terms of our responsibilities as councillors to raise the concerns. As the ward councillor of the, sorry, I'm speaking loudly so you can hear me online. So, teacher's voice. Oh, yes, as the councillor of the local division over Broad's Chain Road, Norman Cavill is completely right. The traffic is dreadful down there. They're allowed to park, so it becomes a single lane. So I'm not entirely sure what a traffic assessment. We've heard about the traffic assessment going north, but everyone will come out of that junction and will turn right when they want to go to the supermarkets. want to go to Tesco's or Morrison's or Sainsbury's, and Chen Road and Dorchester Road. Yes, that's right. I thought I'd gone through all this, but, you know, Chen Road, I think more development and infrastructure needs to be done. I think Councillor Perry's right, we should be looking at this road here. I think there should be a mini roundabout. I mean, the question of highways, I don't believe we can separate the traffic assessment of this new development from the levels 3. I think they have to be taken together. I can't see how they can be done as a standalone. I have seen the amount of traffic that piles up at school times when the school closes. I mean, it's a large traffic jam. I've watched people take 20 minutes to get out of Wellspring Leisure Centre because of it. And I was wondering if highways approached Wellspring Leisure Centre and asked what the impact of additional traffic would be along Chen Road then for their business, and it might affect them. So that's my really just agreeing with Councillor Hadley, Councillor Campbell. I think there are strong concerns about the amount of infrastructure and traffic impacts there around that area. I was also asking about the natural landscape. When I read the report, upwards light rate of 0%, does that mean we have downward facing street lamps? Yes. So, and I guess that's because we don't want the light pollution. And I guess all these and bats. Do we put similar consideration on the natural light that comes from the housing? I mean, I'm thinking at this time of year when everyone decorates their houses in Christmas lights, what effects is that taken into consideration?
In terms of lighting from the housing itself, because this is an outline application, we haven't looked at where the houses are going and what those houses are, other than the indicative lights at the back. If this scheme got through, there'd need to be another application. That would be the reserve matters for the houses, and we would have detailed lighting, and we can limit or restrict lighting on that commission, but it'd be premature to do it at this stage.
No Christmas lights.
Not possibly.
Christmas doesn't count, then. Okay. How was Santa playing tonight?
Okay, before we start round 2, and I've got councillors that already want to speak on this a second and third time, and we can have that opportunity. I need to bring you back to the realities. We are looking at this application, and we're looking at the application in front of you, and on the basis of the information that has been presented to the committee. And Andrew? And so we're going to start round 2 now, if you will. Okay, but as I say, please bear in mind that you're looking at the information that's been presented to us. Any decision on this report?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was going to touch on that. Is it appropriate to say seconds out round 2? Yeah, a couple of things. In my first comments, I referred to the 2 or the area at the back of what I call the backland, the 2 fields. What is their planning status if this is passed? Because I seem to notice there was a little gap in the hedge. And it occurs to me that it wouldn't be beyond the bounds of possibility for someone to make an application for residential on those in the future. Now, I know that we cannot predict what they do, but what we can do is secure the land under condition of wildlife mitigation or something as part of this application.
I think we change agricultural design.
Yeah, so the
But
cultivation.
I'd just like to know. Yeah.
Absolutely.
The 2 fields at the back are proposed to be retained as agricultural. On one of the layouts, I think maybe on that one, there might just be an arrow somewhere in the middle. That's basically the agricultural access into those fields. And
So they're going to be bringing tractors through the housing estate.
yeah, and so there's
Herding sheep. Oh, yeah.
there's also a condition under the reserve matters. So the retention of land labelled as retained agricultural land on the submitted framework plan, is basically restricted, so no development related to this approval should take place on the said retained land.
Okay,
It's restricted.
sorry, yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't spot that. You referred to reserve matters.
Yeah.
And there, will the reserve matters application when it's something to be subject to biodiversity net gain?
No.
No, okay, thank you. Right, moving on to the recommendation and the outcome. As I said, at the beginning, we're in a slightly difficult situation here because there is, I have to say, a degree of inevitability about this. What we have heard today, though, is a considerable amount of concern raised by this committee about the impacts of the traffic generated by this development in combination, and that's an important point, in combination with other recently approved developments. So I think what I would like to do, looking at your recommendations, is, bearing in mind, I think Mr. Hicks say your case has to be in by the 19th, which is Friday.
Yeah.
So you have an awful lot of time to do this. But I would, rather than just simply parroting the recommendation, I think it would be good if there could be some kind of report from the concerns of the committee about the traffic generation in combination with other developments put forward. Because, you know, we're not the decision maker here, but we do have the opportunity. Now, I appreciate what our highways experts are saying, that in general technical terms, it is acceptable. What we've brought to the table here, both the councillors around us and the people who are talking, of course, is local knowledge that, and I think it's not beyond the bounds of possibility, but I think Councillor Hadley said that there is an element of local knowledge that doesn't always get picked up in technical advice. So the roads may be technically wide enough to accommodate 2,000 vehicles a day or something, but if they all turn up at between 8:30 and 9:30, then there's clearly a problem. So I think what I would like to do, and I don't know how to do this technically, is have a rider added to the recommendation, if we agree with them, that actually presents that the committee raised significant concerns about the operation of the roads in relation to this development in combination with other developments, in the hope the inspector will make a site visit and actually stand in the road, because as has been said before, we're not against the houses, but we are against, and I think it was in the recommendation, one of the points, it's the operation of the site, which is of crucial importance here, not the houses per se, it's how it all fits together and works, or doesn't work. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so I think to reflect this back, so just check that I've understood it. In terms of effectively, the highway advice we've got is that the development in itself, from an expertise point of view, can't be refused on highway safety matters, because there is a bit in the MPF that basically says it should only be prevented or refused on highway grounds when there's an unacceptable impact on highway safety, or the residual cumulative impacts on the road network following mitigation would be severe. And severe means something very particular in planning. Having looked at the proposal against that bar, it's felt from a highway officer perspective, we cannot sustain a reasonably reasonable highway advice. But what we can do in reporting back to the planning inspector in terms of what direction the committee would have gone in, as part of that, we can share a copy of the minutes. The minutes include quite a lot of debate about highway safety, operational traffic, and things like that. And we can raise it in our planning statement to say, if members are agreeing the recommendation, that whilst it was recommended to refuse on highway safety grounds because of the consideration against the MPF, there was significant local concern and a site visit is encouraged. I believe pins would always go out on site for a hearing anyway.
Well, I mean, time specific might be useful, but I think the important thing to note is we are not the decision maker here.
No.
We're effectively a consultee.
Yeah.
And so I think we're fully entitled to take a very broad view, whereas if we were the decision maker, then I think, yeah, we'd have to be corralled into but I think we can take a broader view on it.
The other thing is, as well, when it is determined by the planning inspector, we will get notification of when that hearing is. If members particularly wanted to attend or present at that hearing, then we also do so.
Okay,
In
that'd be
terms of
helpful.
presenting those local.
I'll be coming to that. Okay, so I'm going to make a suggestion is that the committee and individual is the case.
Yes.
When
Yeah.
the case to ensure that you're all aware, because I think a number of members will wish to make a point to that. Hang on a second, bear with me a second. I think we need to acknowledge that. We don't notwithstanding that highways advance is not today. We understand that we raised my tax expert. But concerned with local, I mean, it is your responsibility to they take them up from the hands of them. On the material to.
Yes.
It's really.
Mr. Chairman, we are struggling to hear you.
I think the recommendation was that the committee members are notified when we have a date of the hearing.
Yeah.
So in the event that you want to attend the hearing, all those in the thing.
It will be a hearing, won't it? Not written around, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not written.
Okay. And the recommendation was that officers can note that the committee are particularly concerned about the cumulative effect, but that it's not considered by technical officers. The severe as.
But we, I mean, it's, as far as we're concerned, it is severe, but perhaps we're working on a different, scale from others.
The scale of the MPP actually is not.
Indeed.
We are not really agreeing. Right. Stephen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I share many of the concerns that have been raised about highways, but I wanted actually to look at a slightly different aspect, and that is on page 46, 16.5, landscape and visual impact. Because the principal reason, one of the major reasons that the original application so long ago was viewed with considerable concern was the landscaping impact and its visibility from sensitive viewpoints.
You will recall at that age, the landscape officer negotiated.
Indeed, however, there was I am entirely with that, Chairman, and I understand. However, on page 48, in the final paragraph on that section of 16.5, we're talking here about the distance from. There would be no harm to the setting of the Quantock Hills National Landscape given the distance of it to the north of the site. I have to say I'm not entirely sure that's quite sound because it's not about distance, it's about topography and viewpoints. And so just distance is not actually, in my view, a sufficiently strong reason to say that there wouldn't be visual harm. I am not absolutely convinced by this paragraph as to how this site is actually going to fit within the landscape, and I retain considerable concern about it from that point of view. And I repeat, sheer distance from the boundary of a very important landscape, a nationally important landscape like the Whitehall Hills, is not the sole determining factor. It is the topography of the land, how everything fits within it. And I think that's a very, very curious but frustrating moment.
Basically, argued subjective view to be correct.
No, just so fully agree that that paragraph perhaps isn't as robust as it should be, because it should be more than just distance.
Yeah.
From the LVIA, this is the image from designated. So the one in the back is the view that you would see, but then they've zoomed it into this sort of, rectangle that's further forward. The light blue line is effectively the edge of the agricultural land. So the two fields to the back that are being retained as agricultural, that's that light blue line. So at the distance, you can see the light blue line quite obviously. The purple line, which is where the start of the built development is going to go, is a lot less apparent, but zoomed in, if you're then looking at the purple element at the top of the layout, and that's where they have that sway of development that have been limited to single story in height. And we're controlling that by condition for the reason of reducing size scale massing from this viewpoint. So we're looking at the distance of the viewpoint, but also size scale and massing and landscape buffers around the edges as well. So with all of that mitigation, the outcome from the landscape officer was that they were satisfied it wasn't harmful. But it's that paragraph, I would agree.
Indeed, and sorry, Mr. Chairman, if I may continue, I do note that originally an external landscape consultant was employed to provide advice. And I'm by no means decrying the ability of our internal council landscape officer. Nevertheless, there does seem again to be a bit of disparity between using in inverted commas, external expert first time round, and not a second.
Thank you. Yes, please, Mr. Chairman.
I did write your name down, but I wasn't sure whether I was just over optimistic.
No. Pessimistic, perhaps. I'm impressed with the officer. Chapter 9 of the MPPF, word perfect. There's just a little bit on the end of it. That taking into account all future scenarios. Now, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, we are not a consultee, we are the planning committee making a recommendation, which will only be for consultation as far as the field, admittedly. But had I been taking a recommendation forward for this committee, I would say that I believe that the traffic effect is severe, and there will be unacceptable impact on highway safety and or residual cumulative impacts on the road network. And I am taking into account that the officer presenting the case did say he had taken consideration of all the cumulative effect with others. So I think it's perfectly right that we take into account the impact from the other new development that's just gained its plan permission. Because of that, as I believe that it is severe, I look at the last phrase saying, taking into account all reasonable future scenarios. Well, at the moment, all we've seen is an offer to improve the cycleway and footpath. But as far as Chedden Road going down through the existing town is concerned, there's no improvement there. And for going from Linkford Corner through Chedden and Goosenford, there's no improvement there, nor any likelihood of it in the near future. So I believe from that point of view, our recommendation should be that we are against this on those grounds, against this application. And I propose that. Sorry, I don't hear you, son.
You're not going to hear what you're suggesting, but I'm not sure if it's various to do that. I will need to, take me to find the programs I have a chat with you.
Can I add to this? There's, from local knowledge.
One.
Yeah.
Go around the schools if you want.
We don't need to drive by going to people.
My apologies. Are there any other further comments? Because I think I need Chair to take some legal advice And we're going to school recess. If there's anything else anyone wants to say now, it's very time.
Chair.
Andrew.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Chair, just on page 19, where it talks about the section 106 and the unilateral undertakings, where it lays out the financial benefits of the scheme to the area. It's about sort of £2 million. But because it's going to the planning inspector now, could that actually be because it's gone to planning inspector and not through the planning committee and through the council? Is there a chance that we could lose this circa £2 million? That would be, mostly towards education and the £250,000 towards transport. And would Sill be put in jeopardy as well? I'd like to have clarification on that, please, Chair. Thank you.
Andrew, there is a very real risk that we could lose some or quite a bit of that, and on what the planning inspector decides. That's always one of the problems with the appeals. We see the planning inspector decides and writes the 106 as he or she sees fit. That's part and parcel of their decision. So that is always a very live and very real risk. Yes.
Oh, thank you for that, Chair. Thank you.
I was just going to clarify in your deliberations that you're about to have, Mr. Chairman. Are you proposing to rewrite the recommendations or supplement them in some way, or?
Right now, I don't know.
Fair enough.
Honest answer.
Fair enough.
It's the honest answer.
Thank you.
Okay? Because what I want to make sure is that whatever we do, it is robust.
Yeah.
Because what I don't want you to do is have a recommendation with or without the agreement of the majority of the committee, which is not robust, because it will not be helpful. So I am going to.
Very soft.
Chair, Vice Chair, retire for a few minutes. I hope it won't be very long. 20 minutes from now. I might suggest. So if we can, we'll see you very shortly. Okay. I'd like to start the meeting again. Josh, when you're ready. Okay, when we're ready, okay, we're going to reconvene the meeting now. Just for transparency and clarity, just so you know what we were talking about, we were looking at what we would need in terms of evidence for some sort of cumulative impact on road safety. Just that's what we were trying to find a way around. Express in a way, in a manner that would stand up.
May I ask, Chair, from your statement just now, is that in respect of the support for your view on highways or for our views on highways?
It was to see if there was a way forward.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I just wondered if it was supporting your views.
Yes. If there was a way forward with the objection, because sorry, my apologies. Councillor Campbell was starting to suggest something, okay, a possible way forward. And I wanted to make sure that if the committee did decide to go that route, we were in a position that could be defended. Because there is no point going into a position completely untenable. Because all that will happen is the inspector will decide that we've been unreasonable. It's not defendable, it's not defendable. Okay, so I was trying to find a way to get through the impasse.
Thank you.
Okay, that's what I was trying to do, and I needed to do it in relatively quiet, because I needed to listen to what the lawyers and senior planners were saying.
Yeah.
Okay, that's why I moved to the next meeting. Thank you.
Yeah, so, just for confirmation, so as part of the debate, there's been a lot of discussion about cumulative impacts and whether the cumulative impact of this site plus the surrounding sites has been considered as part of the supporting information that was submitted for highways. So I'm going to pass over back to highways, so you can just set out again what the cumulative assessment was as part of the highway information that was being taken into consideration as part of this.
So into this application, when they initially submitted and the 150 submission, so the 180, 150, which the highway authority also raised an objection to, they looked at temporary growth factors to, which takes into account the local plan development area, and then they applied that onto the base traffic to then throw their development traffic on, and then they undertook the capacity assessment of the basis of that, which has already expressed the capacity assessments well within the theoretical capacity, which is similar to submitted to the Lincoln Lane application, albeit that application undertook 15 junction assessments again as presented back into that application. None of those junctions showed any severe impacts. So whilst there's concerns about the friction of movement going down Chedden Road, etc., in terms of what we consider severe, there's no real evidence to suggest that it isn't severe. And then in terms of personal injury collisions, we often look at the last 5 years, that this standard within highway safety and council planning is to look at the last 5 years of collisions. There's no recorded collisions along most of Chedden Road. There's one slight collision on the Dorchester Chedden Road junction, which is for what you'd expect over 5 years. We would expect to be severe collisions, sadly. But along that section of Lincoln Lane, where there is no footway, there are no recorded collisions in the last 5 years, and most of Chedden Fitzpatrick Road, well, there's no recorded collisions there. So I'm still considering NPPF paragraph 116, where we have to review development, and it's quite clear and is strict wording that development should only be prevented or reduced on highway grounds if there would be an unacceptable impact to highway safety or the residual cumulative impact on the road network. Following mitigation would be severe.
I think just point to note for members in terms of what has been considered. I know there was debate about potential alternatives. Unfortunately, at this point, we cannot negotiate on changes to the scheme. We have to determine the scheme that's before us at the moment. In terms of pedestrian cycle safety and highway traffic, there is investment as a result of the scheme in terms of a pavement along that portion of the road that doesn't currently exist. So there will be a safe refuge for pedestrians like this using that area. There is also controlled crossing on either side of the lay-by, connect into the wider pedestrian cycle connections, which is in accordance with the council's placemaking principles in terms of encouraging active travel first and reducing the need to rely on private cars. The surrounding highway network is relatively narrow. When this was raised with highways, it's considered relatively narrow to control vehicle speeds. If you increase the highway, you increase the probability of faster travelling vehicles. With narrow roads, the one thing you have to watch out for is you can you see what's coming? In this case, the forward visibility on that road was considered acceptable in terms of highway safety. So with the information that's been provided with the application, officers and the highway officers were satisfied that actually this development would potentially result in a betterment in terms of pedestrian cycle connections to the site and to the wider area, and that the highway arrangements were considered acceptable, which did look at the growth factor of all the allocated sites in the surrounding area, and what that would do in terms of congestion of the vehicles on that particular strip of road. But the junctions themselves are not at pressure and wouldn't be considered to be severe. So we have looked at the background information that was submitted. We have looked at what was assessed as part of the highway comment on the application. And advice from legal and officers at the moment is we don't unfortunately have any evidence to actually a recommendation of refusal on highway safety grounds. So the recommendation is still as per all members on page, I think it's 57, 57 and 58, with the condition of page 59 onwards, with the addition of a sustainability statement, which will look at sort of low carbon renewables, things like that, to encourage the climate positive planning that the council signed up. Yes, there's a change that they don't need to submit the reservations.
But that's where we are. So committee.
Can I just ask then, in highways term, you're looking back 5 years and say, there's been no serious accidents, by that you mean personal injury, like recorded. So then looking forward 5 years with double the amount of traffic, you say there's double no injuries, or how do you assess the likelihood of additional injuries by doubling the traffic on this road system?
So in terms of that, are you concerned? Because basically when the highway authority and the applicant's TAs don't put double the amount of traffic along that section of Linford Lane with those upgrades. So it wouldn't be because they're not predicting that the number of traffic is going to go that way. They predict it's going to check Dorchester Road, which have the ways along them.
Now, it's so that I understand, Mr. Chairman, before I'm trying to put this forward. To say, my understanding from the sat-nav side of things is that people will turn and head through Chetton as the easier way at peak traffic time.
I would focus on why would people route that direction? Most of the local facilities and amenities are to the south along Chetton Road, or nearby, which people just basically something or cycle to.
Sorry, if people are going to work, well, depends where they work. Yeah, depends where they work.
But so not everyone to go to work was in that east or northern direction. Most of them, not not big enough to be internalised. I think people would still just think there are not. Well, I'm struggling to see why people would head in that eastern direction through Chetton.
I think I can understand Councillor Campbell's point in that if the route is shorter or faster, sat-nav will take you down. And certainly I've been down in my little car, really unsuitable routes that aren't really ideal for driving to work and back, in the instance of time saving. The difference, I think, that we've looked at as part of this site is at the moment, if you were developing this site and nothing else, you'd be chucking people out into that road. So you'd have the pedestrian and vehicle conflict. What they're doing as part of this development is a pavement at the entrance across the front, a crossing, a control crossing, across the highway, and then a bespoke pedestrian and cycle connection route all off the highway, which doesn't exist at the moment. So whilst there may be an increase in some vehicles because of the development, the conflict between vehicles and pedestrians and cyclists wouldn't be as significant as it would be now if we were just increasing numbers. So based on the numbers and the mitigation proposed, which is something that has to be considered by members in terms of what we're securing by condition and what we're securing through 106, is it with the mitigation severe? And the recommendation from officers is that unfortunately there isn't sufficient evidence to demonstrate that that bar has been breached.
I'm still unhappy, Mr. Chairman. With local knowledge and seeing how jammed up it gets at the moment in the morning time, I still think that we will see a substantial increase in traffic rerouting. And because of that, I would still, say that I believe that it is going to be a serious problem to public safety, especially on the road, knowing how people unfortunately at times become intolerant when they're late. So I would still propose that I would think that we ought to be opposing it on traffic bans, because I do not believe that in future there will be improvement. We don't have officer support for it, Mr. Chairman, but we have an awful lot of local support and local knowledge on the numbers.
Can you have a second? Those in second, what form do you like? Those in second. I'm not trying to make them.
No, I would use that local knowledge and assessment of the situation believes that in actual fact there will be an unacceptable impact on highway safety. Chedden School is a first-class example with all the parents milling about there. There's no pavements down there at all. You put extra traffic through there. We've already had one person knocked down. Wasn't a recorded accident, but there was an injury there, wasn't there, Kate?
Yes, air ambulance.
Yeah.
We need it.
So, and I believe that the road network, without mitigation, that there will be severe risk there. And unfortunately, I don't see a future scenario where there's
So let's just say it's on the process. Sorry, but in terms of why it's important, often when there's a recommendation like this, we allow the chair in consultation with officers after the meeting to come up with the exact form of words. Because statement has to be at 19, we don't have that luxury on this occasion. So I think that underlines why it's important that even if it takes a bit more time, the exact form of wording is made clear here and now. We can't just sort of kick it off to be sorted out over the next few days by an agreement there.
Just raised one additional point. You did say highway impacts without mitigation. Is that notwithstanding the mitigation that's proposed as part of that? And the other thing members need to be mindful of if they're coming to a recommendation is what factual evidence there is to support that recommendation. So local knowledge is a lovely thing, but the inspector will want facts in terms of what is the actual harm as a result of the development that overrides the company responses that we've received on the application.
Well, it's a cumulative effect in the investments and not just this development.
I have to point out that the cumulative impact of the developments has been assessed and factored in the highway report. I'm not comfortable with that because we are not comfortable with the evidence. The highway report also includes some mitigation that's been proposed as part of that. And all of that, all the 106, are all potentially up for grabs and may not happen, and the application may get approved if the inspection finds we've been unreasonable. Okay, we could use all of that, including the mitigation.
The mitigation that is proposed is excellent for the immediate area. Traffic will travel through Chedden School area and the like as well, when there are no pavements and no safety area for children.
There is a risk that if the inspection decides that this authority has been unreasonable, that we will lose all the agreements from section 106 and the mitigation that's been proposed. That is a pertinent danger we need to be conscious of. I'm not saying it should affect your judgment, we just saying we need to be conscious of it. It would be remiss if we wanted to point it out to the committee.
I quite agree with you, conscious of the effect and do not want to lose the money. I believe it would be within our policies still look to the safety and welfare of the local school at Chedden
in particular.
There's some kind of form of words. This is effective as we can, it's defendable as we can. Because otherwise, just increase the risk of having problems as we move forward. I mean, I want to do this before we take the vote. You know what I mean? Once you take the vote, if it passes, we can go back. I don't want us to miss an opportunity and get it wrong. And there are several other people who wish to speak. So we'd like to let them speak. If you'd like to think about a form of words. Okay, now on my list at the moment, I don't pretend it's exhaustive. I can't, it's not an open session, I can't take comments from the members of the public. Your opportunity to speak was earlier in the meeting. And I'm not in a position where I can take comments from members of the public. I am very sorry.
We have physical evidence, we have photographic evidence.
Okay,
And it's on the Save Chetney website, it's visible to everybody. I'm sorry if I'm not supposed to speak, but.
Thank you. Fine, I've got three cases that want to speak on this at the moment, and I'm sure there will be more, but at the moment, the three in order are Andy Hadley, Quill, and then Nicholas.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to get a clarification from Highways from what was said earlier. We're saying that the traffic assessments were done when the original application went in on 2019, and then again when they came back.
Yes.
Sometime later, I'm not quite sure when it was. And the traffic assessments took into account what was in the local plan at that time for the amount of traffic. Did they also take into account the fact that in Nerrells there was a through road, so the traffic was allowed to pass both ways, so that would reduce the amount of traffic, or did it not include that? That's what I'm asking, that's the question.
There was a question earlier that in terms of these growth factors and then applied it to the base network.
The growth factor applies to the base network, which is all area for a number of junctions that need to start on there.
Yeah, the area.
But that is, it's the network as is.
Yeah,
without improvements.
Yeah.
Right, so that didn't include any of the traffic or the road network on the proposed sites within the local plan areas.
It proposes growth.
So the growth that would have been in that plan.
And similarly, the Lingford Lane.
Lingford Lane would have been in the plan.
To the growth.
Yeah, I'm trying to work out whether
they would, and so that base growth level is accounted, so.
So the growth level, as people understood at the time, would have been assessed and taken into account.
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand in my own head whether that included the link road that went straight through the Nerrells estate, or whether the Nerrells estate didn't exist.
It includes not just Nerrells, but a broader picture of that. It includes Nerrells and other junctions. I'm not quite sure how far out it goes.
Yeah, I understand that, but it included multiple accesses out of Nerrells, well, not just the one access that we have now.
It included what's there, and then as that changed, then the programme was updated.
Well, I don't believe it has been updated, because you did say it wasn't assessed for this application.
I think what you said, Andy'd asked me, was it predicated on there being a road through Nerrells? I think the answer is no. It assumed growth figures consistent with Nerrells being put in place. It didn't assume a road going through the base of the network as is.
Their assessment didn't put any traffic, right?
So it assumes that people doesn't assume that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm beginning to think that the roundabout is circulating a bit here and I'm going round and round. In terms of what is being proposed or opposed from Councillor Cavill, I suspect he will come up with some wording that It's the flip side to the recommendation here. So I think the question I first want to ask, and there's something I want to go on to, is actually, are we asking ourselves the right question here? Are we actually locked in to having to make a recommendation? Or do we have a free form to be able to express the comments of the committee? Because if we seem to be reversing ourselves into a strict planning application determination cul-de-sac, which is causing a lot of problems. And if we're in that particular place, I will find it very difficult to support Councillor Kebble's proposed opposition to this, simply because of the planning background we're in. So I do wonder whether we've put ourselves in an unnecessary straitjacket here, and we ought to be looking at a slightly more broader statement for the officers.
I don't think we can put ourselves straight jacket. I think we're in a straight jacket due to the.
Well, I mean, we've given the
recommendation. Due to the decision to go to the inspector for non-determination.
But
that sets up a whole new timeline and.
Yeah, but as I said earlier, we're not the decision maker here. We're just
We are asked as part of our submission against non-determination by the inspector what the decision has been.
Well, we could choose not to make a decision. We could choose to defer it. I mean, if we're going to start, I see what I'm doing.
I understand what you're saying. Theoretically, so I'm going to turn over to the law.
I have another point to raise, just to cheer you up.
Thank you so much. My understanding is that if we were to just defer it, because we don't want to make a decision.
Or can't make the decision.
All right, or are struggling to make a decision, then the inspector is likely to take a very poor view of that, because we are a planning committee, we're supposed to determine the application of governance. We're back to that position that we've always been, which we have to determine.
But exactly, we're not being asked to determine this. Oh, that's the thing, isn't it?
No, we're being asked to tell you
We've
what
been asked to do
we've been asked to say what our determination would have been. All right, so yes, theoretically we could defer it, but I think that would be.
Well, that wasn't a suggestion.
I think that's fairly relatively poor choice.
Yeah, no, don't disagree.
Sorry, Dawn or Leslie, which one wants to go first?
Well, I was just going to explain the process of what happens next for officers. So today is supposed to be committee deciding one way or another whether they are supportive of the recommendation that officers have presented, or if they would have objected to the application and come up with material and reasons to do so. What happens next? In 4 days' time, the officers need to write a robust report setting out what we would have done and why we would have done it, with evidence to justify whatever the outcome is. So this is why we're being pushed quite so hard about the evidence, because that's what the planning inspector will from us. If members can decide not to determine it, in which case we would be taking it to the planning inspector with what officer's recommendation and specialist's opinion was this. Committee didn't want to determine it and took a neutral position, and therefore we won't be defending any objection to the scheme.
Yeah, but that's the situation we're in now. If you look at the recommendation, you're going to be you'll be putting a recommendation for approval. So, I mean, essentially, you want us to rubber stamp that. With the conditions, of course. So we're being asked to rubber stamp it.
Or not.
The option
It's
is,
quite difficult to do the or not, frankly.
yeah, the option is open to members in terms of, are there any other conditions or any other 106 obligations that would make the development acceptable in terms of the concerns of harm that you've got? Based on the concerns of harm that are being raised, you've had the information from the specialist officers and legal advice has been given in terms of whether there is evidence to support an objection on highway safety grounds, which at the moment there isn't. But, you know, if there are additional conditions or additional obligations or anything like that, that members feel could overcome some concerns, you know, at this point of making the theoretical determination, we would then present those points back to the planning inspector, but we need a clear outcome, one way or another, to be able to inform what we're doing in the next couple of days.
Okay, thank you. Now move on to my second.
You had a second one.
I have a second point, and this is about accidents. Accident statistics. And I think the personal injury was mentioned, but I don't know whether that just simple bumps and scrapes are recorded. Now, and my general theory is, and I suspect most will back this up, that most accidents on the highway are relatively minor, and most of them do not get reported on an official database. So there is a massive under-recording of traffic incidents, which is perhaps not surprising. When this came to a fore, we had a fatal near my village the other day. And out of that, it turns that apparently the police don't always report accidents onto the official database. And also, there is a facility on our county council, or the council database, to actually record accidents. So the general public can actually go in there and say there was a shunt on such and such a place at such and such a time. And I think really just to get the message out there, that if you want your accident, if you really want accident statistics to be comprehensive, then people need to start, parish councils and things need to start making sure that they're recorded properly, because our traffic officers can only go what's there, and the inspector will only go on what's there. They can't say. And if this one is not recorded, so.
I don't disagree with you, but it doesn't take us any further forward.
No. I mean, this is just a side issue. In fact, that the accident was recorded, and clearly it was. If it had been, I suspect it might have had an impact. But yeah.
Okay.
Just going into this festival of highways, we just heard, and again, it's all been about the impact of traffic, specifically collisions. And I just wanted to ask, in highways assessment, then come to assessing the harm attributed to traffic, whether you then take into account the change in air quality. And whether is that harm assessed, because we are now looking at increased traffic from 2 sites now, L3 and this new variant entry. Checking those, it's very congested. Traffic does move very slowly because of it. And of course, that is just impacting on air quality outside the school. And again, the air quality outside the school. Now, if you've got more. Do highways make an assessment of that harm due to traffic?
Yes, sorry, it's not highways, but environmental health.
Okay.
So.
Well, it might be, but.
Yeah.
It's been created by traffic.
Yeah. Irrespective of the source, what happens in terms of air quality is that if there is an area that is at risk of getting close to a level that would impact on amenity of surrounding residents or users or anyone walking through that space, it gets given a designation as an air quality control area. There isn't an air quality control area within the vicinity of the site. So it's not a current known or close to being known issue.
My next question is, there should there be the amount of increased traffic?
Not currently based on the information we've got, but if it becomes an issue, then it would get designated as an air quality control area.
And it's something we can add to our mitigation and required by.
There is no recommendation from environmental health for it to be required. So unless it's reasonable and necessary in terms of scale relative to the development proposing, it's unreasonable for us as a committee to add it on. Sorry.
It's for air quality monitors.
Well, I mean, that.
A lot of town, cities like it's part of an assessment of causes. Highways and environment team up more.
I mean, air pollution as a result of traffic is something that environmental health monitor. It's just not in an area that's supposed to be at risk.
Stephen. Thank you for your patience.
Oh, no, still, and again, it's a slightly harking back to this landscape issue, if I may, because it does cause me very considerable concern. And despite the assurances that we've received, nevertheless, my personal view is that the impact will be more harmful than is currently being assessed. One of the issues, however, that was brought up by Officer Reeves earlier is the presence of bungalows or single-storey dwellings on the northern edge of the site. I note on page 47 that the amended framework plan illustrates single-storey dwellings at the northern end of the site. However, going through the list of conditions, the extensive list of conditions, there are many things that are indicated on that as being very specific and will be a requirement at reserve matters stage. I don't see that. And now I might just be missing it, but it strikes me if this is being considered as one of the key things that will be securing a minimisation of the landscape farm, that needs to be mentioned more specifically, and I can't see it. It may be there, it may be hiding, it may be implicit, but I think
You probably use the second paragraph on page 47.
Sorry?
The amended framework plan illustrates single-storey dwellings at the north.
Yes, indeed, but
given the extent of the site and the northern direction.
indeed, but if you then go through the conditions that follow on from page whatever, there are many other things that are mentioned, including the retention of the hedges and beefing up the woodland planting and so forth. But I don't see the single-storey dwellings on the northern edge specifically mentioned as a requirement. And if we are relying on that as being one of the minimisations of the landscape impact, that I think sort of needs to appear more explicitly.
So can I just hold that thought a second? Opposite, is that something that we add as a condition to strengthen that?
Yeah, I mean, condition 2 does say to be carried out in general accordance with, and then list the approved plans. So one of the approved plans is the development framework plan, which shows the lighter colouring. But I agree with your point in terms of it could be more specific.
Well,
So-
indeed, thank you, because in the next one, we've got reserve matters. Reserve matters that challenge the following design features.
Yeah,
And other things are mentioned there, but not that,
yeah.
which is very much something which we're relying on, is minimise the landscape.
So in addition to condition 2 and the recommendation for the sustainability statement, we could add a condition that the reserve matters be constructed and submitted in accordance with the parameter plans, indicating single-storey dwellings of the northern.
Northern edge, yeah. The single-storey, northern edge.
Yeah, actually, the opposite suggestion is just to add it as a sub-element of the reserve matters condition. So we've got it as D, or single-storey dwellings.
Yeah, well, that was actually where I was.
Yeah,
thinking.
no, that makes a lot more sense.
I hasten to add, Mr. Chairman, I reserve my decision on the other items. Councillor House can bring forward. But if we are going to
Anything that makes it
put it forward, I
easier
think
to understand is helpful.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other further comments at this stage? No, okay.
Right, try and put things together simply, but studies and photographs of the local network by studies and photographs of the network by local people raise concerns for the children at Chetton School. Increasing in traffic will put them more at risk. Right, there's one item. And the other is the proposed cumulative increase in traffic will be acceptable on grounds of highway safety, there being no pavements on any of the roads from Lingford Lane through Chetton to Monkton Heathfield.
Sure, we mean
unacceptable.
Sure, we mean unacceptable.
That's sorry, that's what I said. And they're unacceptable. Sorry.
Right, okay.
That's what I've written.
Yeah.
Okay. Because all those roads, people are walking on them, and more people are walking on them with dogs as well as children. And if you increase the traffic through there, you'll be putting them more at risk.
I understand
what we're trying to say. I'm struggling a bit whether this is a strong enough wording for us to be able to vote and use as a reason for refusal. I'm trying planning reasons in there.
How would you strengthen it, Mr.
Well,
Chairman?
I'm not sure I can, because just because I don't think I can, that's my problem.
Well,
I'm really not trying to be difficult, I'm trying to give it.
That's all right. And the other thing I would put on the end of it, of course, is taking into account that there is no further mitigation in the foreseeable future. Is what I've written down.
During the meeting, so before the meeting, I haven't looked at the Save Chedden web pages. I've now looked at the Save Chedden web pages. There are photographs. There are, well, I haven't found any detailed highway reports or anything on there that would provide an evidence base that we could use. And the question would be, is it reasonable to introduce new information at this point that the applicant hasn't viewed or considered or responded to? But there are photographs on there. There are photographs showing a lot of traffic and a lot of congestion. But photographs only tell so much. It's not an evidence background that I would be comfortable saying members could rely on.
The other information we can bring into it, but I can't bring it here for you tonight, is the simple the board does record the 85th percentile, which is 34 miles an hour, in 24. But the top speeds that were recorded were 95. Yes. Okay. But there weren't that many of them.
I'm really struggling with seeing getting from the words for this. I'm really struggling from the words that we might have any chance of doing anything with.
Can I'm trying to do the count anything. Good. And can I ask Dawn if there is obviously highways big issue? Yeah. Can I ask if more financial contributions towards the provision of the safe means access, towards the home?
Yeah, but you have to be for specific.
Yeah, for the path to the cycle, let me finish. To access to and from Chedden Road, incorporating appropriate visibility, display, pedestrians, cycle crossing facilities be set aside. So I don't know whether that's something we can actually incorporate within our potential recommendation to the.
That's already in there in terms of the estimates for the £250,000 being asked for through the.
Above and beyond.
To do what?
Well, at the moment, if this scheme came forward and then that money would be used for the pedestrian access from the crossing point across the front, and then connection from this site to the secondary school. So that's where that money would go if Lingford Lane doesn't come forward. If it does come forward, Lingford Lane is committed to delivering that anyway. So if they were delivering that anyway, then the £240,000 goes towards other wider infrastructure improvements within the facility. So at the moment, Foster's view is that it's covered in the 106. And at the moment, the 106 has approval between ourselves and the applicant. But as set out, the inspector has, they call it a blue pen clause.
Yeah.
So if they think anything in it is unreasonable, they can strike it out. So if we were to add to that value, given that the comment that we've had is 240 is sufficient to mitigate what we need in terms of highway purposes, if we were to say the committee would support it as long as there's an extra £20,000 for pedestrian and cycle infrastructure improvements, the inspector may consider that unreasonable, may strike it out as part of the blue pencils, but if it's something the committee feel they can evidence, we can put it forward in the recommendation, but it's ultimately the inspector's decision and that we can evidence that you want.
Really sorry. The German department from me. Sorry, guys. My apologies.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Look, we've got the pizza wheel of doom going on here at the moment. And we're clearly finding it really difficult to be able to get to a position that produces a sustainable set of objections. We clearly feel reluctant about this and concerned and anxious. However, a lot of the information that clearly is at the hands of the community is not available to us today. We are the decision maker, the inspector is. What we're about this afternoon is to have a tenable statement that we can support as an authority to put to the inspector, that the inspector takes the decision. I just wonder whether it would not be sensible for us today to say we have some concern about Highways issues. Nevertheless, on the basis of the evidence put before us by the officers, we will have to accept the recommendation that is before us today. Nevertheless, we do urge the community to register with the inspectorate to make sure that their voice can be heard by the inspector as part of his decision-making process. That is the key thing, that the community get to speak to the inspector and that can be considered an appeal. Now, I understand that our submission has to be in by the 19th. So I would assume, therefore, that at the very least, the community needs to have registered with the inspectorate by that date.
I'll just check, but I think that's correct.
Chair, if I can.
Of course, please. Sorry, I was turning both ways.
The caveat before I speak is that it is information that's come from our friend Co-Pilot. But I've searched with 6 parties. What we see there is notification to interested parties. Within a few days of the appeal starting, the planning inspectorate notifies the local planning authority, the LPA. The LPA then informs anyone who submitted representations on the original planning application and invites them to apply for Rule 6 status immediately, typically within 5 weeks of the appeal starting. So if there are residents who wish to be considered as a Rule 6 party, the recommendation is that they contact an inspectorate.
Was a rider out on the website doing the address, the email address and the postal address of the planning inspector and the reference number for this? Can you do that?
Yeah, my understanding is that when we get notification of a live appeal, consultation notifications go out to everyone that we had correspondence from during the lifetime of the application anyway. So they've already got notification letters with those contact details on it. But effectively, it's for the third parties to contact the planning inspector.
Well, can we do our level best then to encourage the community and those that have spoken, especially this afternoon, to contact the inspectorate as a matter of urgency so that they can their view directly to the inspector?
Suggestion that Bart makes a note of the names and addresses of those people that are still here, and possibly even the names and addresses of those people who know them that were here earlier, because I don't wish them to be disadvantaged in any way. I'm sure you're given details of the planning inspector address and the number. Obviously, there's a reference number for this appeal. So I don't know off the top of my head. So I would.
And Josh can provide confirmation of the actual reference and everything. Sorry.
Hey, I'll email it through you. Is that a good central point?
Yes, except I don't have this gentleman's.
I got it.
You've got it. Right. Well done, Josh.
Thank you.
Good. So if I go through you, everybody that you know, that saves me having to.
Yeah, that's okay. I mean, spread it far and wide.
I will. Thank you.
So on that basis, Mr. Chairman, unreluctantly, I think.
Okay, well, we are at a position where we've had proposal proposed and seconded. we need to vote on that first. Sorry? Unless it were to be withdrawn. We haven't agreed wording, that's true.
You have been agreed.
It's Norman, just one second, if you don't mind. Harold, was it something you wanted to address first before this?
Yeah, well, no, just of the Stephen thing. I think when you're talking about the concerns, some of us have really grave concerns.
Yes, right, okay, yeah.
Grave, very grave.
I just wanted to make sure it wasn't something else. Norman, my apologies.
No, I'm looking at trying to find a solution the same as you. Sustainable transport contributions that are made both on this site and on Linkford. Could we put in an addition on the end of the first paragraph there, where you've got the subject to suitable planning conditions and obligations under a section 106 agreement, along the lines which should include utilisation of sustainable transport contribution in and around Cheltenham primary schools. Because Cheltenham Primary School is the same distance or less than Narrows is.
I understand. I understand. You do that, you do that.
I was going to say, in terms of the heads of terms, so we've currently got 234,062 towards sustainable transport improvements. It just says to the north. Would adding to include consideration of Cheltenham Primary School and land room facility cover the concerns?
Not really, it wouldn't cover all concerns, no, but it would certainly cover one of the main concerns and one of the highest risks.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay. So would it be better if that was phrased, just sustainable transport improvements and normal quantum to include, in particular.
To include consideration of land around Cheltenham Primary School.
Primary, so pardon me, I'll put my teeth in, Cheltenham Primary School. Would that be
that's a sustainable transport contributions, yeah.
Would that satisfy your, it might not satisfy your concern, but to get us on the right road?
It gets on the right road, we've got to argue the rest of the pier. Because, so we have to make our case for the transport.
And looking at altering the section 106 and that bullet point on sustainable transport improvements in the north of Taunton, in particular outside Cheltenham main school.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
In particular.
And label it sustainable transport contribution.
Outside.
Yes. Full address is Cheltenham, it's paying CE primary school.
Okay, no, I don't want to get it wrong. Okay, so finish 58. I've got this there, so that's kind of going on. It reads, two sustainable transport improvements in particular outside Cheltenham near the sea level fund. Okay, so we are now. Are you prepared to withdraw your?
Yeah, okay.
You are, okay, so we're now going back to the original motion, which was to agree this.
So can I just confirm what we've got in terms of taking into account everyone's comments so far?
Yes.
So in terms of, if I start with the proposed change to the heads of terms, which is what we've just discussed.
Yes.
It's amending £224,000 towards sustainable transport improvements to the north of Taunton to include consideration of Fitzbane CB Primary School.
Yeah.
In addition to the conditions listed as printed as part of the agenda, there's a requirement for an additional condition that requires a sustainability statement.
Yes.
And we were adding D to condition 3, which specifically requires a single storey dwellings to the northern end of the site.
Yes.
In accordance with the development framework plan.
And we were also going to mention that that phosphate mitigation was acceptable.
Yes.
Is that somewhere else?
Yeah, so at the bottom of the head's terms, it was a, subject to the receipt of a phosphate credit reservation certificate.
Yeah.
As part of the officer's presentation, you don't need the reservation certificate, at this stage, you need it prior to commencement.
But it needs to be provided prior to commencement of the first one, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, prior to commencement of the first one. Okay, well, I'm going to propose from the chair that we accept the recommendation. Second bit. Sorry, thank you. And can I see those in favour of the
Six.
Okay, those against? And any abstentions? 2, 3, 4 abstentions.
Are you completely, you're not voting this, to get back?
Anyway, stop it. Okay, one final thing on our agenda, which is, two final things on the agenda. One is item 6, which is going to speak to, and the other is any appeals that we have received. Just give Dawn a moment to explain about item 6 on your agenda.
You do not need to determine another application. Items that have been pulled from this committee, that will be back for members in January. Effectively, the revised application has been received and registered and validated today. So we're hoping to get it back for members for full examination in January. And we haven't had any appeals, so there is no further information.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.